All right, Israel has also launched its first airstrike on Beirut's Kola area, killing 3 members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Lebanon's health ministry reports that Israeli attacks have claimed 105 lives in the past 24 hours as airstrikes continue across the country. Now, in Gaza, Israeli strikes have killed at least 28 people in the last day, bringing the total number of deaths in Gaza to over 41,000 since October. Meanwhile, Israeli forces have also targeted infrastructure in Yemen, killing at least 4 people. The conflict continues to escalate on multiple fronts. For more on this, let's now welcome Professor Hennie Strydom. Prof, thank you so much for your time and, good afternoon to you. Just help us unpack all that is currently happening in the Middle East. Of course, there are now growing fears that Israel will launch a full on-ground invasion of Lebanon, with the conflict continuing to escalate on multiple fronts, as we've seen. What do you then think is Israel's main game here? In just a matter of hours, we are already saying that more than 150 people have now been killed in Gaza, Beirut, as well as Yemen.
Yeah, there are 2 burning questions at this point in time, and given the current context of the escalation of violence and the conflict itself. And the one is about the question whether Israel is preparing for a ground invasion. So if that happens, we may see a repetition of what has happened in Gaza with displacement of thousands, if not millions of people. And secondly, the destruction of infrastructure and maybe a disproportionate number of civilian casualties. And I think that is what the international community is seriously worried about, should that happen. The second burning question, or issue rather, is whether a ceasefire, even a temporary one, is possible at this point in time in the conflict. Israel has already indicated that it's not at this point working towards that. And I don't think that as long as the sort of retaliation going on between the 2 parties, that there will be a willingness on either side to opt for a ceasefire, which may bring to an end the current hostilities.
Let's look at then what the U.S. specifically is saying and also what Iran is saying. A political advisor of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah, has called the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah a miscalculation on the part of Israel and of the U.S., saying that their actions will essentially result in the eventual collapse of Israel. And also, we know that the U.S. has also said that, that they are very angered by the fact that, Israel decided to act aggressively towards Hezbollah. And they, of course, are worried about, a larger regional war. And questions, of course, are where does Iran also stand in all of this that's going on?
Yeah, I think what is not inconceivable at this point in time is that Israel might have the military objective to weaken Hezbollah for many reasons, in order to remove that threat or to limit the threat itself. And I think if we look at the current attacks that have been going on for some time now, and the assassinations of leadership persons, that points to that kind of objective. But the consequence of that is that there will be an escalation. So Hezbollah is not going to sit back and wait for the next assault. And it becomes a tit for tat. And if that's not going to be stopped in any way, peaceful way, then it might be an all-out war, and it might have dire consequences for the region as a whole.
And I mean, just on the, that part of Iran, Iran is known, to play a long game when it comes to wars. How likely then are we to see Israel waging some form of surprise attack on Iran, given what is currently already happening in the territory with it already bombing infrastructure in Yemen? And then, of course, what's happening in Lebanon. Of course, we know that also Lebanon still bears the brunt, of 15 years of civil war already. So there's so many questions around the possibilities of Israel just then surprising Iran, quite possibly, with attacking that part of the territory.
I don't think under current circumstances that is part of the plan. But it might happen if Iran becomes more actively involved in the conflict on the side of Hezbollah. So which I think at this point in time, we have to wait and see how the response will be eventually from Iran. At the moment, there's no immediate danger of that happening.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a little bit, Prof, on the fact that, the possibilities of a ceasefire happening now is quite slim. But what should then the call from particularly the West be following that call by over 21 countries in the UN calling for an urgent ceasefire in the region? I think 21 days was the proposed amount of time.
Whether that will take place, that ceasefire, depends on the following. First of all, whether the Western world can put enough pressure on Israel to concede to that, and whether the circumstances are ripe for a ceasefire. The second one is whether Iran can place or put more pressure on Hezbollah to also come to the table and negotiate a ceasefire. So the role of the external forces at this point in time is crucial to achieving that objective. But that will depend on whether there is a willingness on both parties to become part of that whole arrangement and to start negotiating the details of it. But as long as there are from both sides attacks going on, I don't see that it will be conducive to reaching the objective of a ceasefire at this point in time.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Of course, Professor Hennie Strydom is an international law expert.